Yeah, all right. I guess we can just begin. Yeah, so my name is Frudensia Hadunka. I'm doing this paper with my advisor, Kathy Bayliss. So I'm from the University of Illinois. So this paper is titled Staple Foods, Pest Crop Damage and Natural Resources Exploitation. So this is the case of fall armyworms and charcoal production in Zambia. So why do we care about this? Why is this a big deal? So deforestation, particularly in the sub-Saharan Africa, has been a big deal, which has been threatening climate change, not just in the sub-Saharan Africa, but globally, and also the biodiversity is also being affected. So the biggest reason why there's so much deforestation in the sub-Saharan Africa, the major thing is charcoal production. So usually farmers produce charcoal when they have like this production shock. So it's an alternative source of income whenever you have like production shock. So it's like, you know, these rural farmers, their main source of income is agriculture. So whenever they have like this crop shock, they produce charcoal just as an alternative source of income. So as starting from the end of like 2016, most of the sub-Saharan Africa reported the cases of fall armyworms. So fall armyworms is like this pest that usually attacks maize. So, but because, you know, the sub-Saharan Africa, the climate is like very warm. So it seems that this pest is going to be a problem for a long time. So understanding that and how this production shock can cause deforestation is very, very important. So here's the theory of change. So what really happens is that if a household is affected by fall armyworms, you know, and then it attacks the maize, which is like the staple food, which we usually make the staple food out of. So farmers have no choice at that time because like their income is stripped away from them. So they produce charcoal, and then this charcoal that's being produced because they have to cut down the trees. That's causing deforestation and then worsening the climate change. So the research questions, like what are we trying to investigate? So we want to find out how this pest increases charcoal production. And then in the presence of other like farmer coping mechanisms, because like farmers have mechanisms that they can use against this, this pest, how that affects their decision to actually like participate in charcoal production. So they have like other things that they can actually do, but like how is that going to affect their decisions? So just to give you a snapshot of the results. So we find that fall armyworms in a village increases the probability of producing charcoal by 3.48 percentage points. So it's increasing from already the 22% to 26, which is like really a big deal. Then these results are also robust, linear, including also region-specific trends and also instrumental variables for fall armyworms. Then the coping mechanisms such as migration, reducing the maize share, spraying, these mechanisms reduces the likelihood of farmers to participate in charcoal production, while other coping mechanisms like off-farm labor and crop diversification increases this likelihood. So I'm going to, I'll go in detail to actually explain how this actually like really happens. So what's like the contribution? What are we bringing to the table? So the first thing that we're bringing to the table is that we're providing the insight on how deforestation can be driven by these responses to fall armyworms, the production shock. Then the second thing that we're doing, we are trying to contribute on the direction of this deforestation and agricultural productivity. Because usually like most of the studies that tries to attempt to answer this question, it's usually, they always explain it to be like a negative relationship. Like you increase agricultural production, then you reduce on, it affects deforestation like negatively. But with this study, we're saying it depends with what mechanism that you are using or what coping strategies that you are using. So this study also estimates the impact of the negative shock on forest as a coping mechanism in the presence of other coping mechanisms. So if they're using other coping mechanisms, how's that affecting? So also on the method part, we are using the correlated random effects model. So the advantage with this model is that it accounts for an observed heterogeneity in non-linear model without this incidental parameter problem. Because if you just use like the linear probit model, and then you add the fixed effects model, you are going to be in trouble with this incidental parameter problem, and then your estimates could be biased. So we control for that. And then one of the biggest things that we are contributing with this, we're using the producer data. Instead of like using the satellite data that a lot of people have been using, which could have like some errors, especially like in places which doesn't have like the woodlands. But with this one, we're able to get our own primary data. So talking about the data, so we have this huge rich data set, which we call household income, consumption, and production survey. So it's at household level, and then we have all these demographics. And because we have the geocodes, we're able to extract the rainfall variables. We're able to extract the temperature variables. We're able also to extract the forest, the deforestation rates. So we are able to get it from the global deforestation data change. And then for the treatment variable, as I said, it's just the intensity of 4 armyworms, like how much were you hit by these 4 armyworms. And then for the treatment years, we have 2017 to 2019. And then for this study, because I'm using a diff in diff with correlated random effects model, as you know, I have to actually show to prove the parallel trend assumption that it's actually like really working. So because the data set, I only have one baseline year. So I test this assumption using the leads test, and I also get deforestation in the neighborhood of the households. So I create a buffer on those geocodes, like where these households are, and then I overlay it with the global forest data set, because within 5 kilometers, that's where all the activities are happening for that particular households, including the deforestation and also agricultural activities. So I also use the rate of deforestation from 2014 to 2015 to show these pre-trends. So just to show, again, just to show that the two groups were kind of like the same in the baseline. So in the baseline year, which is 2015-2016 agricultural season, you can see that it's balanced across all the covariates. Yeah, so as we go forward, I want to explain why I'll be lagging the variable, the 4 armyworm variable. So for countries like Zambia and most of the countries in the sub-Saharan Africa, the rainy season usually starts around like October. That's when we have like the first rainfall. And then around November, the planting starts. So the 4 armyworms are usually reported around January, but the harvest is usually between July to August. So now you see that the agricultural season is between like October to August, but the charcoal production is happening around like September. So these 4 armyworms are not affecting the decision to produce charcoal in this same year, because this agricultural season is ending.
That one I can't help with.
Yeah, so it's ending in August. So you can see it's in the next year. So these decisions, for this year, the charcoal production is being affected by the 4 armyworms that happened in the other agricultural season. So that's the reason why I like the variable. So as part of the ways to actually like show the parallel trends assumption, I go further and also test for the leads. So the leads test, the assumption is that, for the leads have to be 0 of that treatment should be 0. So you can see that on this regression, like the leads is actually like 0, which shows that before treatment, the 2 groups were the same. So this is how the trends look like. So you can see that there's a huge jump here from 2016 to 2017. when I actually like plot the trends. So yeah, I show that pretty much the parallel trend assumption actually holds. So for the model, the most important thing about the correlated random effects model is that it captures the time invariant unobservable characteristics. And then the other thing is that, yeah, the means of, it also captures the means of the time varying variables. So those are the two important things that are able to actually like control for this incidental parameter error. So you might ask like the endogeneity question, like how is it that like some households are making the same decisions at the same times, and how are you controlling for that? Yeah, which is clear that, you know, there's a possibility of having simultaneity. Like a household might decide to spray at the same time they might decide to do to practice crop diversification. So I control for that because I take advantage of this rich data set, which has like the variation in the coping strategies across the camps. So I get like the average of those coping strategies in each camp, and then I exclude the household that I'm observing at that time. So in that way, you know, there's no like, I control for the endogeneity yeah, problem. Yeah, I can explain this later if somebody has a question. So the other thing that somebody might worry about is the issue of misreporting. Like you can say that because these farmers, they are self-reporting, they are reporting their infestation themselves. So self-reporting thing could be another issue that somebody might be worried about. So I also get like the average response for each camp, and then I exclude that household that I'm observing. So you can see that pretty much these results are the same as just the household when I'm not controlling for the misreporting errors. And then I control for the possibility of the household spraying. So if a household sprayed or not, I also control for that. So you can see that the results are very robust, like across all the specifications that I try to control for. Then the biggest thing is that I'm also looking at the charcoal, the quantities that are being produced. So according to a study by Malibui and Zeb, a tree of like 32 centimeters in breast height on average only produces 80 kgs. Now you can imagine like how many, just as the intensity is changing from one level to another, you have like 1,343 kgs that are being produced. So how many trees are being cut down to just like really cover up for this change in intensity of fall armyworms? So this is a big deal. So for the coping mechanisms, I'm using maize share and spraying, crop diversification, and migration. So because the variable is lagged, which means that if a household is affected in the previous season, they're affected by fall armyworms, in the following season, the behavior is that they reduce their crop share, and then they increase spraying. And also with crop diversification, because they're reducing on the crop share, so they're increasing in like producing other crops as well, which is like a good thing. And then migration is just one of them. They might decide to actually move to other areas that are not as infested with fall armyworms, because the eggs that are being laid by fall armyworms can live until like 3 years if the conditions are like really suitable. So just a nutshell, like we can see that, so with the maize share variable, I get the inverse of it. So what I'm explaining here is that if the fall armyworms were to increase, you know, like the household reduces the maize crop share, which actually like encourages, which makes them not to actually like produce charcoal. So that's the same with spraying. Spraying reduces their likelihood to actually produce charcoal. And also, yeah, and also migration. But crop diversification, it actually like really increases that likelihood to actually produce charcoal. So yeah, so this study, we're just trying to shed light on the impact of agricultural pests like the fall armyworms on natural resources and the mechanism that leads to that resource degradation. So on the policy aspect of it, we're encouraging policymakers to focus on interventions that actually like reduce maize share. This is like very sensitive topic because like for maize, which is like the staple food, trying to actually like make people diversify into things that are not like the staple food would be like really a problem. But we're trying to shed light on that, that there could be another mechanisms that they can actually like use to actually like prevent people from producing charcoal. So also spraying, which would be like the easiest one, but yeah, apparently not so many farmers have been exposed to that. So yeah, basically this is my presentation. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, please. Yes. Yeah, you go first. Yeah, you go first.
Yeah, I guess I have a question about the mechanism of coping. Especially I don't know if we have like the data for the specific type of people coping.
Right.
That is interesting to look at. Say if you migrate, what actually makes them migrate instead of spring, they choose like migration. Do you happen to have that type of data, especially like
yeah, I have like the data, yeah, the migration data on that.
Yeah, it's so maybe it's like an interesting direction to go, but I just feel like looking at the mechanism of looking as something that might be.
All right, yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, I'll look into that. Yeah, Michael.
Yeah, so I don't know about this, but I'm wondering about the effects of what's going on with these farmers and neighbors. So if you're having some regions, and then say like my neighbor got an infection last year, and maybe that drives me to diversify my crops and in anticipation that maybe I'm gonna have an infection. And so if that happens, that might kind of hide some, might make it difficult to.
Right. Yeah, yeah, to a larger effect, like when I plotted, yeah, this is that. Yeah, so when I plotted the effects, yeah, it wasn't showing that, like you can predict that it's going to be on you. And the farmers actually like know that. Like if you have it, it's not like really obvious that your neighbor is going to have it. Yeah. Okay, I might have skipped the map when I was actually like writing. Yeah, so I managed to actually like trace that to actually like find out if this person is having like 4 armyworms today. Is there like a high likelihood that the other person is going to have? But like there's no that spillovers. Yeah, and the farmers are like really aware of that. That it's not like really obvious that if I have it, you're going to have it. Yeah. So spillovers are not like really, yeah, a concern. Yeah. Any more questions? Yes. Yeah. All right. Oh, yeah. If I got the question right, you're asking whether there's a cycle where they're able to plant a tree. Yeah, right. Yeah, with the aspect of planting trees, I haven't like really seen that as something that's being practiced. Yeah, it's yeah, I don't know if I got the question. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Then they go away, the people go back to the farm and then they attend the and then it's like a cycle.
Ah, okay, okay. Oh, like they migrate out and then they come back. To the,
I guess, like the question, I don't know if I understood this correctly. Is it permanent or temporary within yeah, so deforestation happens after deforestation is not that's
oh, no, no.
is, you know, like when pesticides
Mhm.
always there, and then you can't go
Yeah, this is what my line is. We
I guess it's just the deforestation, it's like the past.
Mhm.
When the past is there, the deforestation is permanent for temporary.
Ah, yeah, the deforestation is usually like very permanent. Yeah, because these are like natural trees. It's not like they're able to plant, harvest, or anything like that. Once they cut it, it's like really gone. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Right. Yeah, right. Yeah.
That's what I'm like.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. My name is Tong Wu. I am a rising fourth year PhD student in applied economics and management at Cornell University. Today, I'm very honored to be presenting our research on optimal forest management for interdependent products in nested dynamic bioeconomic model and application to bamboo. Forest supplies forest population with both timber and non-timber forest product, and the need for sustainable forest management is particularly acute in developing countries such as China. We're going to be focusing on Moso bamboo forest in our paper because it's the single most important bamboo species in China. Here's a picture of the Moso bamboo forest that I took in Zhejiang province in August of 2018 when I traveled there to conduct research and collect data. And in this paper, we're going to develop a novel nested dynamic bioeconomic model of the management of forests that generate interdependent products that differ in their growth cycles, rates of growth, lengths of growing period, and potential harvest frequency. And these are our research objectives. We're firstly solving for the dynamically optimal bamboo stem and shoots harvesting strategy. We're then comparing the optimal bamboo stem and shoots harvesting strategy with the actual harvesting decisions being made by Chinese bamboo farmers in reality. And then we're using our nested dynamic bioeconomic model to develop a dynamic structural econometric model, which is helpful to understand the beliefs and perceptions of bamboo farmers that underlie and rationalize their decision-making when they're making the harvesting decisions in reality. And our final goal is to simulate, analyze, and design policies and institutions to improve Moso bamboo forest management in China. And before I actually dive into the dynamic model, I hope to briefly capture the management of the Moso bamboo forest. Both bamboo stems and bamboo shoots are products that are harvested and then sold on the market for a Moso bamboo forest. And then winter shoots generally have a higher unit market price compared to spring shoots. And the management of the Moso bamboo forest involves making decisions about both the timing and the quantity of stem and shoots harvest. And our optimal Moso bamboo management is a very complex dynamic problem because there are dynamics and interdependence of bamboo stem and bamboo shoots biologically. What it's saying is that in its natural states, bamboo shoots will grow annually from a bamboo plant underground rhizomes, which is their underground root system. And these bamboo shoots will only grow within a year. And after the end of the spring shooting of each year, bamboo shoots will grow into bamboo stem. And then these bamboo stem will continue to grow each year until age 4 to 5 years where they mature. And the harvesting of bamboo stem entails cutting down the bamboo plant itself, while the harvesting of bamboo shoots, the harvesting of bamboo shoots does not. And we're going to use a separate Chapman-Richards growth function, which is a relatively flexible S-shaped curve, to characterize the biomass accumulation process of three major types, J, of our bamboo product that we considered in our model. And these three types of bamboo products are winter shoots, spring shoots, and bamboo stem. The Chapman-Richards model is given by this following equation. And on the left-hand side, we have Yj, which is the total biomass for bamboo product J in a single bamboo plant. And it's a function of Tj, which is the age of bamboo product J. Aj, Qj, alpha J, and mu J are just parameters whose values we calibrate for each bamboo product J. And after calibration, we have, of course, two Chapman-Richards growth function for both the bamboo shoot and also for the bamboo plant. And this piecewise Chapman-Richards growth function is the biomass accumulation for bamboo shoots. And on the x-axis, we have time, which is the age of shoots. And then on the y-axis, we have biomass. We see that it's piecewise because at this point, this is before the spring shooting, at the end of the winter shooting. During the winter shooting period over here, bamboo shoots are basically dormant underground. And after the end of the winter shooting, it started to emerge above ground. We see that the growth rate of bamboo spring shoots is relatively high. It's actually much higher compared to what it is in the winter shoots. And we also have a Chapman-Richards growth function or biomass accumulation function for bamboo stem. And it's a very simple concave function. And we see that at about age 4 to 5 years, bamboo stem basically stopped growing. And the rate of growth basically slows down at about the end of the third year and beginning of the fourth year. And in our numerical dynamic model, we're going to nest an inner finite horizon within your daily dynamic programming problem, which captures the daily bamboo shoot growth within a year, within an outer finite horizon between your annual dynamic programming problem, which captures the annual bamboo stem growth from year to year. And our control variables are bamboo shoot harvesting decision AS and bamboo stem harvesting decision AB. And the value function, which is the present discounted value of entire stream of per-year payoffs when bamboo stem and bamboo shoots harvest decisions are chosen optimally, given by this following gamma equation. The dynamically optimal bamboo shoot and bamboo stem harvesting decision are chosen to maximize today's per-year payoff pi plus beta, which is the discounting factor multiplied by the continuation value, which is basically the expected value of the value function next period, conditional on our state variables and actions for this period. And that's pretty much everything I hope to talk about of our numerical model. Now I'm going to present three major sets of our results from the numerical dynamic model. The first set of results is regarding to the harvesting of bamboo shoots, and it's generally optimal to harvest bamboo shoots as winter shoots at the end of the winter shooting season each year when there are bamboo shoots starting from the second year. I know this is a lot of words, but graphically, in the first row, we have the optimal strategy, optimal trajectories of bamboo shoots harvested. Given different initial states, we see that bamboo shoots are harvested starting from the second year and at the end of the winter shooting season. And we also include in the second row, the number of shoots per hectare. Basically, it's the state variables accordingly. And the intuition why wait to the second year to harvest bamboo shoots is relatively simple, because in the first year, all the bamboo is in the form of bamboo shoots. And if you remember, bamboo shoots will grow into bamboo stem at the end of the year, which this is really important because the number of bamboo shoots at the beginning of each year will depend on the number of bamboo stem remaining at the beginning of that year. So what this is suggesting is that one of our state variables depend on the other. So if bamboo shoots are left to grow into bamboo stem at the end of the first year, then there will be both bamboo stem and bamboo shoots to be harvested starting from the second year. And it's optimal not to do any harvest in the first year because we want to have both products to be harvested starting from the second year. And the second intuition you might wonder is, why do you want to harvest bamboo shoots each year? And that's because starting from the second year, the number of bamboo shoots at the beginning of the year is not affected by the bamboo shoots harvest in the previous year anymore. If you still recall in the previous slide, the important paragraph is that one of our state variable is depending on the other state variable, but not depend on the action variables that taken place in the previous period. So it's optimal to harvest bamboo shoots each year for which there are bamboo shoots starting from the second year. And the third and most important intuition is that we're harvesting bamboo shoots at the end of the winter shooting period. And that's because of two major reasons. One is, if you recall the piecewise biomass accumulation function, the first piece of that graph is actually biomass accumulation for winter shoots. And if you recall that, the most biomass a winter shoot will have is at the end of the winter shooting period. And also, if we have the net price of winter shoots high enough relative to the net price of spring shoots, then on the last day of the winter shooting period, we're also having a higher unit market price because it's a winter shoot. And also we have a lot of biomass accumulated in this bamboo shoots. So this means that it's optimal to harvest bamboo shoots as winter shoots at the end of the winter shooting period. Result number 2 is not surprisingly regarding the bamboo stem harvested, because it's the other important bamboo product we consider in our model. And it's generally optimal to wait to harvest all the bamboo stem until the third year or later after their growth has begun to slow down, and harvest bamboo stem at the beginning of the year. Graphically, what this is saying is that bamboo stems are harvested at the beginning of the third year or later, and they're harvested at the beginning of the year, which is important. And also we have the number of stem per hectare, which is basically the state variables accordingly. The intuition why do we want to wait to the third year or later to harvest bamboo stem is because if you recall the concave biomass accumulation function, bamboo stem continue to grow each year until age 4 to 5 years, where after that their growth basically stops. And the growth actually starting to slow down at the end of the third year and the beginning of the fourth year. So when the bamboo stem started to grow like slower, the opportunity cost of waiting to harvest will outweigh the benefit of waiting, which provides us a good timing of harvesting. And the timing of harvesting bamboo stem is also important here, and we're harvesting at the beginning of the year. And the major reason for that is because the number of the same thing here, one of our state variables depend on the other. So this is saying as long as our number of bamboo shoots at the beginning of the year is determined by the number of bamboo stem at the beginning of the year, we no longer have to worry about we don't have bamboo shoots to be harvested in that year. So if growers wait until the beginning of this year, we'll have both bamboo stem and bamboo shoots to be harvested from that year. And keeping bamboo stem past the beginning of the year will no longer affect the profits of bamboo shoots afterwards. So we can harvest at the beginning of the year. Result number 3 is actually a stochastic version of our numerical dynamic problem, which we have a stochasticity of rain, which is an addition to what we already have. So if the probability of having a high precipitation year is high enough, and also if there's enough bamboo stem as initial states, then we can harvest a little bamboo stem on the first day of third year, harvest all the bamboo stem on the first day of a later year. Don't get depressed because of the wording. What this is actually saying is this graph on the top right corner of the slide. So when we have a lot of rain in that year, and also we have a lot of bamboo stem already as initial state. This is initial state, that's basically the highest initial state we have. Then we see that there are twice of the bamboo stem harvested compared to what we have in the deterministic model where there's no stochasticity of rain. We only have one harvested in the previous result. So that's a major result for this, this result number 3. And the reason why we're harvesting multiple times of bamboo stem is really straightforward because we're in the stochastic world. The number of bamboo shoots at the beginning of the year, which is one of our state variable, not only depend on the other state variable, which is the number of bamboo stem remaining at the beginning of the year, but also increases if the preceding summer or this summer had high precipitation. So if there's a lot of bamboo stem and also a high probability of rain, then it may enable bamboo farmers to harvest a little bamboo stem without foregoing too much of the shoots harvesting or shoot harvesting profits in the future years. And we compared optimal bamboo stem and shoots harvesting strategies with, as given by the numerical dynamic model, with the actual data or actual decision making being made by Chinese bamboo farmers in multiple bamboo plots and multiple townships in Zhejiang province in China. And we also compared the optimal and actual welfare. Our results suggest that the actual bamboo stem and shoots harvesting strategy come close to approximating our optimal strategy, but also have some features that differ from what our model suggests to be optimal. And to the extent that some of these differences might reflect possible suboptimal behavior of the bamboo farmers, our results have important implications for ways to improve Mosul bamboo forest management in China. And in ongoing work, in order to better understand the beliefs and perceptions of bamboo farmers that underlie and rationalize their harvesting decisions, we use our nested dynamic bioeconomic model to develop a dynamic structural econometric model so that we adapted from John Ross' 1987 engine replacement paper, and we better understand the beliefs and perceptions of bamboo farmers. Based on the nested fixed point maximum likelihood estimation of John Ross, our MLE estimation, nested inner finite horizon within year daily dynamic programming problem within an outer finite horizon between year annual dynamic programming problem. And we solve for the continuation value and the choice probability for each day in each year at each evaluation of the likelihood function. And then we use this MLE estimation to find the parameters theta to maximize our likelihood function L theta. In ongoing next steps, we're going to calculate welfare, of course, and like optimal welfare, actual welfare, and also dead weight loss. And then we'll continue to develop and update our dynamic structural econometric model so we estimate the parameters better, and we could better characterize the beliefs and perceptions of bamboo farmers. And we're hoping to simulate the effect of various alternative forest conservation policies and forest management approaches, and also design sustainable and effective forest management and policies that maximize the net benefit to the society. To conclude, our results have important implications for Mosul bamboo forest management in particular, and forest management more generally. And our novel nested dynamic bioeconomic model has important implications for ways to improve forests worldwide, particularly when the forests produce products that are renewable, that grow on trees and can be harvested at more frequent intervals than the trees themselves. Real life examples or analogies include fruits, nuts, sap, and maple syrup. Thank you very much for coming. I'm looking forward to any questions and comments you may have. Michael. Yeah, that's actually a great question because, yeah, so first of all, we incorporate uncertainty of weather or climate in the numerical, like stochastic model, but not in the numerical model. But it's there. Also, for the sensitivity part, I would say that it's pretty sensitive, but we try to incorporate all the costs we anticipated. And also, since I were there doing like field work, I talked to the farmers about like what fertilizer you use, how much it costs them to harvest, what labor, how much they pay the labor and the wage and stuff like that. But I would still say it's sensitive, but at the same time, I'm not confident enough to present the results from the structural model because we just run it and I don't want to put it there and then figure it out it's wrong. But we have finished that part, but we still want to calibrate that before we actually present it. So it will be sensitive in the numerical model, but also I feel if we have the structural model, then we're estimating the parameters that farmers believe. So basically we calibrate the biomass parameters in the Chapman-Richards growth function. And we also characterize their utility function, their profit function, like using what we have in the numerical model. But if we use like the structural model to estimate the parameters, the sensitivity problem will be like largely coped with the structural model. So I definitely feel I'm not confident enough to present the structural results yet. This is so far like the presentation was so far that I'm confident to present. But I think the sensitivity problem is like a great point. It has been asked before. So. Any additional questions or comments? Sure. Oh, yeah. Thank you. That's super helpful. Okay. Based on your experiences, what would be a good color to make it popped out? Oh, so the solid, I'm sorry, I should have explained this. So the solid line here means the start of the bamboo growth year, which is generally September 1st of the calendar year. And this is the winter shooting period. So yeah, I know I should have explained it better. Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's totally a valid point. Okay, thank you. Please.
Kind of curious, so the harvest of the bamboo is on the market, right?
Yes.
So just figure how is the market and what aspect of the market is going to be used for creating the model?
Yeah. That's a great question. So for the numerical model, we are taking a price. So we calibrate for the price. We use the actual price in reality for both bamboo shoots and bamboo stems. But we collect the data for price, like daily price for bamboo shoots, and also because the bamboo stem price hardly change every year. So we use a stable price for every year, for each year and then every year. And also talking about the mechanism, like the market mechanism, it's a relatively non-market driven production process. So you can think about like Chinese bamboo production is organized, like smallholder farmers are organized by production cooperatives, and they follow the guidelines of these production cooperatives. And also they basically what they're doing is that they follow the production advice from the forestry guys in the cooperatives. And also when they like already have the product, they have the stem, they have the shoots, then there will be on-site collection. So actually the production cooperatives will get the I guess the what is it, like the purchasers or like the actual buyers of these products, and they will like use trucks to go collect the products on site, like on where the plot is. So it's a relatively I would say it's a relatively simple process, but also it's not that market driven because like smallholders are not actually going there compete for a price. Yes, that's right. Yeah, they don't, I mean, they have price expectation just based on the weather or the climate. They seldomly have a price anticipation because of, this year's market is good, and also I feel like it's kind of embedded in the weather because they would anticipate a good year when there's like enough rain, then there's enough bamboo shoots to harvest. But also they know that if everyone has a good year, then the demand might be a concern because like if there's so much supply, there might be a trouble that they cannot like sell all of those. But like, as I said, because it's on-site collection, the price is relatively stable. Yeah, that's yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm happy to chat like afterwards or just send me an email. Here you go.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about the land conflicts in Brazilian context, and I'm going to try to tell this like a story. It's a kind of lengthy work, like a data collection, and for me to understand the whole problem itself. So I would like to like share this as a story. So the objective, the question I'm asking is, does the mandatory and self-declared land registration reduces land conflict in case of Brazilian Amazon? And as you can see in this map, Amazon is a pretty like a huge geographical area, and it is covered across the countries. And I'm highlighting here in the corner, Brazilian side of the Amazon frontier, which is usually referred as a forest frontier. It's also the age or arc of deforestation. So that's how literature refers to it. And you can see in 1985, there is a penetration highlighted here in yellow color, whereas deforestation patterns are emerging across the frontier, but also on the Brazilian side. By 2020, this has expanded so much. And so geographically or spatially, we can see that deforestation is happening almost everywhere. You can see in the Brazilian side of Amazon. But what is happening temporally? So if you plot the yearly average deforestation rate from 1988 to 2021, you can see there is two patterns emerging. Up until 2004, the average deforestation rate was 17.8 square kilometer. That was a yearly average. So each year you saw roughly 17.8 square kilometer area getting deforested in the Brazilian Amazon. Whereas after 2004, it dropped to 10.2. And this was largely to do with the local and federal deforestation control policies, which the then government enacted from 2004 onwards. So even recently, there has been a lot of changes. And you can see one thing I would like to highlight, that the deforestation, although it decreased, there is this U-shaped curve which is hitting it now. So what happens to the land conflict during that time? So the overall pattern of the data suggests there is this thing called Caesar pattern, I am calling it. So earlier deforestation was pretty much very high compared to the neighboring regions also. So the high deforestation, we saw low land conflict, but I would like to highlight that there is a kind of hand-in-hand trend, at least before 2004, when the major policy intervention, which if you are interested, I can talk more about that, is colloquially referred as PPCDAM. It's a quite mouthful name of prevention of deforestation, and so much. So after that, you can see that deforestation rate decreased, but the conflict are increasing. And I'm curious about this time period. So I start studying from 2000 onwards that why is this particular phenomenon occurring? And first, secondly, if there is a land registration program which happened in Brazilian Amazon, which was one of the, I think, one of the biggest land registration program occurred in the world. So if your property, you're an individual landholder, and that doesn't mean you have a legal title. You could be a person just possessing the land, occupying the land, or even a part of a rural camp. So if you're tilling that land or using that land for some purpose, you're a landholder in a Brazilian Amazon. And by law, which is 2012 Forest Code, you're supposed to register your land into this georeference registry, which had a component. So for example, you can see in this particular figure, there is an outline of a property, but there are more characteristics. You can see the native forest and the land cleared also. So this law also dictates some three, I would say, mandates each landowner has to follow. First is to register their property, and by that, they have to literally go on the GIS software and demarcate their own properties all over the Brazilian Amazon. The second was to protect APP. Now, this is a very specific term, which means the areas of permanent preservation. So these are the areas of a forest close to water body. And there are a whole lot of ecological, environmental, and social benefits emerging from them. And it is always intended, ecologists usually or forest scientists would argue that this forest should be protected for many purposes or benefits coming from it. So that's one of the mandate in the registry. And the second is to restore the legal reserve. Now, I'm not gonna go into details of what happens to that. I just wanna highlight one thing. If you are in a Brazilian Amazon, you own 100-hectare land, you have to maintain 80 hectare of that land under the native vegetation. If you are not, and there are a lot of nuances to this, but in general, if your land is not 80% under native forest, you have to restore that. And in this property's case, you can roughly guess that that person has to restore a major portion of that strip to get back it with the 80th percentile threshold. So that is called legal reserve. So now this is a massive program which occurred all over Brazil, but there was a precedent to this program. And one of the early registry intervention occurred in that northern state referred as a para, and the southern one Mato Grosso. So these two intervention occurred before the 2012 forest code occurred. And in order to analyze them in my setup econometric strategy, I refer to the early treated cohort 2008 and 9 together as early treated cohort, and then I call the late treated cohort 2012. And this is important because this is where the econometric strategy or the challenge was, which I had to handle in order to answer the question whether the registration into the CAR, which is Rural Environmental Registry, reduce the land conflict in that region or not. So my conceptual framework is pretty much straightforward. I have a treatment intervention, which is a registration into the CAR, and the outcome is a number of land conflict or number of violent escalation. So these are the violent outcomes of the conflict, murders and attempted murders and those kind of things. I have two cohorts here, 2008 and 2009. Both of the results I'm presenting today deal with the early treated cohort. And my hypothesis is that I'm going to define land tenure a little bit broadly. So tenure security in a sense that you either possess, occupy, or have a camp on the land. By camp, you mean you have a family and you're settled there and using the land. So in a Brazilian context, if you historically look at this, people do that. It is also referred as a squatting. You just go over the land, clear the land, and try to do some agriculture there and live there with your family. And these are mostly small scale, smallholder farming households. So tenure is defined a little broad, and I'm saying that the registration provides us some kind of security, tenure security, which should reduce the land conflict. That's my main idea. I will go over the data section if it comes back, question comes back again, but I just want to say that then in the end, I have 808 municipalities in this red outline area, which is by law is referred as a legal Amazon, because there are some things which changes once you are in that territory, when it comes to conservation efforts, as well as property ownership and many other laws change inside that. So I have 808 municipalities, and I'm talking about 2001 to 2012 period. So I would like to go back to that idea. I said there is an early treated cohort, there is a late treated cohort. And recently, especially in last 1 year, we have seen there is a whole uphill in the difference literature, where we realize that if there is a treatment intervention before the, say, treatment actually occurred, so if there is anticipation or there is an early treatment coming in some smaller regional area, that can actually give you biased result if you just use the static DID setup. So basically, I would like to begin with one simple idea that I do go with my Y as a land conflict, and the treatment is a binary if the property or municipality had received that treatment, the CAR registry. And in this case, we see there are two cohorts like I highlighted earlier. I also look into this staggered and dynamic DID setup. Mostly, I am referring to two papers here. One is by Sanan Abraham and another one is a Colve Santana. Those who are familiar with the literature would see that one of the advantage of doing something like this is I'm able to say what happens to the cohort 2008 and 2009 as opposed to each other or comparing it each other. And in the end, what happens to the cohort 2012, which got the CAR registration probably in the end of that particular timeline. And I also give my some robustness specification using synthetic DID, which I'll come back later. So my main results suggest that looking at the escalations, which is defined as I have shown in our screen, the conflicts escalation reduced once the CAR registration occurred, and which is kind of substantiating my hypothesis, which I said in the beginning. Similar trend can be seen in the second cohort also. And I would like to show this graphically. You can see that in the state of Para highlighted here, the conflict escalations reduced by 31% unit. Once the intervention occurred. Similar things can be seen in case of Mato Grosso, the state on the periphery of legal Amazon once again. We see there is a 20% decrease in the escalations here. And I will test the same setup for the escalation and the same model for the dynamic event study. So I want to see what happens if you put the cohorts together dynamically and see what happens before and after the treatment, no matter when the treatment came in. So 2008 or 9, basically that is a 0 here. And you see that there is overall decrease in the conflict escalations, that is mostly violent conflicts in after the registration occurs. I also test this same model using number of land conflicts here. And here we find a contrasting result. And I have an intuition behind this, why this might happen, which I will explain later. In state of Mato Grosso, we see there is a positive increase in the conflict, and that can be seen graphically. Once again, similar things. Here we see 47% decrease, whereas in Mato Grosso's case, there is an increase in the number of land conflict. So now remember, one of the key message I would like to highlight here, both dynamic event study as well as the staggered DID shows that the early treated cohort also has a heterogeneous treatment effect. So one of the advantage of using something like this new method is that I'm able to see whether the early treatment cohort itself received treatment heterogeneously, and the effect of a treatment was heterogeneous. And that is kind of very insightful information to understand if a land registration has some local dynamics emerging within these states on the periphery of Brazilian Amazon. So I do provide robustness checks with the different strategies, because a lot of these questions about whether the conflicts in Brazilian Amazon reduced or not are kind of hot topics when it comes to deforestation literature. And I wanted to make sure that the results are testable using alternative data, or using the strategy where I am measuring how much of a proportion of land is enrolled in the registry in a municipality. So it's like a continuous treatment scenario where I see where low versus high enrollment has a different effect. And my results for a state of Para are consistent throughout the robustness check strategy. Here I only present one of them. Now to go back to look at the map of a legal Amazon for a moment, say I'm testing what happens to this particular cohort if the treatment occurred in 2009. I don't really have ideal control group. I'm keeping all of those other municipalities as a control when I use staggered DID or a dynamic event study. But in the synthetic setup, I create this blend of a control using this other municipality. They are subjected to the same law. They are part of a legal Amazon. And I think bioeconomically, ecologically, they should be same. You create a blend of a control out of it, and the results remain same, especially for this cohort of Para, where we do observe reduction in the both land conflicts and the escalations. So to summarize, what I get here is this nuance information that first of all, the number of conflict, which is basically the event occurring where the two parties may have some kind of dispute, and then there is a violent conflict that the outcome was someone's death or attempted murder or something like that. So these two show little bit diverging results when it comes to second cohort, that is a state of Mato Grosso. But in any case, dynamic event study says that the overall trend, the registration decreases those particular number of conflict and violent escalations. That is true when it comes to the state of Para, which is my main focus in this paper. That it is consistent for my robustness check strategy. One of the more elaborate strategy I have kept here, if the question comes, I can show that to you, especially the ones with the low and high enrollment one. And so I would like to just reflect a little bit on this part, but it is still one of the things I'm learning and understanding. Why would something like this occur? Why would two states who are neighbor, and in Brazilian context, let me put it in a picture. State of Para would be probably much bigger than many states in America, like United States of America, or maybe in India also. So this is a huge geographical area. So although they are neighbors, a lot of factors are changing in between. For instance, I should have added a map here, but I just want to go back to this map. Mato Grosso is a state which is predominantly soy agriculture or corn agriculture state. So there's a lot of agricultural expansion here. Whereas Para is now exposed to the agricultural activities or opportunities in that sense. But when I say now, I mean last 10 years, not like this year. Just want to make sure. I mean, Brazilian people usually tell me don't use the word now, because in Amazon's context, everything now means 30 years from now. So it's dynamically evolving, and I want to be very sure I'm not giving a time frame wrong. So basically, these two, although neighbor, they are kind of distinct states when it comes to local economy and other, I think, attributes. And what I want to argue here is that one of the thing is, and I think in a forest economics, we are usually talking in terms of benefits of clearing a land versus keeping the forest, right? And in this case, what is happening is that there is I would say, increased or new benefit opportunities in the state of Para, where you can see the forest fires are increasing. That means even now there is a new forest burned up and the new land cleared up, and that can give an opportunity for people to register the land. And that also means the land available for expansion is more, and that could reduce the land conflict in that state. So one of the mechanism, I think, is to do with these fires. And these are only forest fires. I was careful when I went to Earth Engine. I had to calculate only the fires occurring on the forested area, not on the agricultural land. And because in Mato Grosso, that can become a very important bias if I end up measuring just number of fires. And that's where you see in Mato Grosso, the forest fires are reducing. One can also argue there is not much forest left in that state. But whatever it is, there is no newly cleared forested land. So the conflicting opportunities for something like that are different. And I would, by that logic, I mean it's contrary to the Para's logic, where the new land emerges, so people might not fight with each other, they'll just occupy the new land. So this is just thinking loudly, to be honest. Mechanisms can be very, I would say, complex in this particular case. Yeah, I would come back to the second mechanism later, but I just want to highlight what I think this paper would suggest policymakers if it comes to that, like my recommendation. My understanding is that the registration itself is a very complex process, and there has been a lot of overlap between the registries. For example, indigenous territory and these private properties have a lot of overlap. So in a state of Para, that can definitely indicate increasing land conflicts, which I find when I do my robustness checks with a very small sample surrounding the indigenous land. So the government or federal government has to look up for these opportunities and focus on them. Yeah, I think my time is up, but I would like to come back to some of these questions if you guys have on that. Thank you. Oh, yeah, appreciate it. Yeah.
I have a question regarding to the parking limit. In the household
Yeah, they do. So
they anticipate it before
I think so. I mean, let me put it like this. The car was a kind of idea which was there in almost every state in Brazil and Amazon. It was never an idea that, well, not before 2012, there must have been discussions and debates about it, but it was not an idea of mandatory participation. And that's why when I was choosing my method, I was very careful that there is this probably a self-selection in the treatment. But because it's mandatory, I didn't really have to address that question explicitly, specifically in the first model's case, the DID case. Yeah. Yeah.
Have you tried to control for any
In these main results I showed here, you can see I do try to look for the pre-trained test here. But my argument for the pre-trained in this case, like I said, deforestation and conflict goes hand in hand. In a similar way, conflicts within cohorts go hand in hand. So I actually show that visually, although I didn't really find another pre-trained test. I'm still working on them. One of the tests I find is this chi-square test, which doesn't satisfy the pre-trained. But once again, I would say that synthetic DID doesn't meet that test. So the results are consistent for that also. And I highlighted 3 robustness check strategy. one of the results, especially the high versus low are here. I also use a generalized synthetic control, which doesn't require parallel trend. My results are same for the state of para. We do find a significant percentage reduction in the land conflict in that case.
Yeah, to follow up on the synthetic control, have
Yeah.
you also think about like the match control based on
Mhm.
propensity score or something?
Yeah, so the method I use in the second part, if it just like quickly, I will show you what I mean. So basically, I have this low versus high enrollment, right? So what I do, I exploit two types of variations here. One is the variation within this enrollment threshold itself. So I have divided like tested the sample where I just keep the ones who are fully enrolled versus no enrollment. Or I also keep the ones sample which has a smaller say control threshold, then compare it with the rest of the sample. So I vary it a lot. I've tried it, I think using 10 combinations. So that's one way I try to answer that question, whether my control group is really a good control for the treated units.
Oh,
But
yeah,
secondly,
I'm not doubting that.
no, I was myself concerned about that actually, because this is something tricky. Treatment occurred to everybody mandatorily in 2012. So now if a question is to answer what happens after 2012, whether the conflicts reduced after that or not, was a little tricky here. But secondly, what I do, I use this method called generalized synthetic control. So it allows me to use different kind of pre-treatment matchings, not just say propensity score, but also there is a called EM balance method, or so I do like 3 or 4 treatment matchings, and the results for para do remain consistent actually. Here I didn't really show the whole results, but this is just a result using staggered DID and for a longer period. So you can see the consistency after the period 5, this is 2012. So now I'm talking about this big like confidence interval, maybe because of the low like power sensitivity to the control group in this particular part. But my intention was to see if the sign of a effect and a significance in some way remains same when I'm doing these multiple robustness check strategies. Because to see the reduction in land conflict in say in the state of para, there might be a lot of questions asked that why, because I'm also exploring these different mechanisms. So I hope that, I know that's an elaborate answer, but it's a kind of complex idea I'm trying to figure out also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is great. I'm
Yeah.
just trying to say, like, if there's something else that potentially could be helpful.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
no, I think you like that.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
thank
I
you.
guess we have to go around and then, yeah, people want to discuss.
Yeah. Thank you guys for coming. Yeah. For all of us.